There's no fizzy drink in this area. Only Mitzi milk. But do you want to hear a story of the things that lurk in the dark? Do you? You do? Okay. Well, follow me. Come over here. It's noisy out here. This way. Yes, I did get that to work. Thank goodness. I realized I forgot to add my mic. So that's what the big long pause was, is me trying to find my mic. Okay. You ready for some stories? I felt like a little bit... Oh! I've got to reach the... Oh! Thank you for the head pat. Let's fix that. Hello, Huckletree. Okay. Why I don't want to get started with this. Twitch, what are you doing to me? Yeet Sulphurous room for headpats. Yes. We love headpats. They're amazing. Oh. My cauldron's starting to bubble. Oh, thank you, Huckletree. Okay, it is there, so that means... let's grip these two together. Totally not any magical stuff going on with the cauldron behind me. Just ignore that. Ignore it. It's all totally fine. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. What am I doing? I need to call this Mitzi. Now, the head pat should follow me. I'm bigger. We're close. It might have been because I changed my size. Oh. It's about here. It's a work in progress, okay? Where's the head pat? Oh, it's moved. Needs to be bigger. There we go. Now we're cooking. Okay. I come semi-prepared to tell you tales of the dark and mysterious. I actually found some Lovecraftian tales online. I don't really know much about the lore in the Lovecraftian world, so I figured that I need the book in front of me that I can Mitzi I figured what better way to learn. So I'll read it. Who will I read it from? The book is here. Here we go. I know what to do. Hang on. I'm gonna go up here. And book will be down there. And you know what I'm gonna put on the book? Totally prepared. I am totally prepared, guys. Grr. Where is it? What did I call it? This. That's really big. Yes. I feel like we're beginning the Mitzi May story time. Here we go. Wait, which way would the cover be? Would it be the other way? Like this way? I mean, they're not my tails. There we go. You know what? That'll do. That'll do. Stories from my personal diary. No. Okay, let's see. Let's see what I have. I thought what we could start with. Yes! We are in a tavern, bar, restaurant corner. We're in a corner of it, Huggetry. I'm just gonna figure out how to zoom this because it's too small. Where's the lavatory? You have to go outside. How do you zoom? Oh, it zooms everything. It's not what I want. But I guess we're just gonna have to deal with it for the purpose of today. Let me move this over here. You guys have to let me know how the audio is going, because this is going to be a lot. It's going to be very audio dense today. So if it's too much, speak up! Speak up! Look, Huggetry. Tavern. And then we went to a corner. The Mitzi corner, where it's story time. Oh, I forgot. I wanted to add this. Text. What's a gothic style font? No, what's a scary style font? Black Adder? Do I have that? That's perfect, thank you. That's actually perfect. Where did my text go? Oh, it's tiny. Okay. Okay, this is our first one. Wingdings is a font that fills you with dread. Oh my goodness. Of course. Of course. You used to have that as your email font in school because it was illegible. Pff, it's not that illegible. I can read it. Okay. Who knows the story of the Call of Cthulhu? Who knows its origins? Is it just me who's unfamiliar with it? You vaguely listen to podcasts about it? I've listened to a documentary about H.P. Lovecraft and his life. It's quite interesting. He was a very sad man. Okay, that's fair enough. Hello, Darren. How is my audio balance? Can you hear me? Lots of artists add that. That's very true. That's true. Okay. Let's begin, shall we? Please don't play an ad. Okay, I think that's alright. I'll try and keep an eye on the sound elements. I wonder if I can move this. Why not? Oh, it's not too bad. He did, yeah. We'll start with Chapter 1. The Horror in Clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a dark new age. Oh my goodness. This is gonna test my reading skills. Theosophist. Is it Theosophists? What's it? I've never heard of a Theosophist before. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of this cosmic cycle wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood, if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not for them that there came the single glimpse of forbidden aeons, which chills me when I think of it, and maddens me when I dream of it. That glimpse, like all dread glimpses of truth, flashed out from an accidental piecing together of separated things. In this case, an old newspaper item and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor, too, intended to keep silent regarding the part he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 27, with the death of my grand-uncle George Gamel Ank. What is this long name? wait, no. Serious. Gotta be serious, Mitzi. Serious, Mitzi. I'm tired. His grand-uncle is called George Gamel Angle, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. There we go. People back then had 72 names. Seems like it. Professor Engel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witnesses said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking person. Oh, I knew he was racist. It's the time. It's an old tale. Nautical-looking person who had come from... He's extremely racist. I know. Who had come from one of the dark courts on the precipitous hillside, which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased home in William Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart, induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man, was responsible for the end. At the time I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but latterly I am inclined to wonder, and more than wonder. As my grand-uncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later publicized by the American Archaeological Society, but there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much averse from shewing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then, indeed, I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so, seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. Euclidean geometry. He found so many adult toys. No! For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas-relief and the disjointed jottings, ramblings, and cuttings which I found? Had my uncle in his latter years become credulous of the most superficial impostures? I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas-relief was a rough rectangle, less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern. Thank you for the follow!
Chris Lee Young, welcome to the pod.
Oh, where are we? Its designs were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of Cubism and Futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind, the bulk of these designs seems certainly to be, though my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and collections of my uncle. This is overpowering me, isn't it? Let me turn it down a little bit. Here we go. The collections of my uncle failed in any way to identify this particular species, or even to hint at its remotest affiliations. I swear I turned you down. Why are you so loud? Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or a symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surrounded surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings. Oh, I didn't know he had wings. But it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. The writing accompanying this oddity, aside from a stack of press cuttings, in Professor Engel's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style. What seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulhu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. The manuscript was divided into 2 sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dream Work of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence. Rhode Island, that's what R.I. is. And the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LeGrasse, 121 Bienville Street, New Orleans. What is L.A.? La. Where's New Orleans? It's in the south, isn't it? New Orleans Lane? New Orleans, LA, at 1908 A.A.S. Last story. Last study. Notes on the same and Professor Webb's account. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes, some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons, some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, and the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythology and anthropological sourcebooks as Fraser's Golden Bough and Miss Murray's witch cult in Western Europe. The cuttings largely alluded to an ultra mental illnesses and outbreaks of group folio mania in the spring of 1925. He really likes to list long titles. And the stern. Okay. The first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Agnell, bearing the singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design and living alone at the Fleur-de-Lis building near the institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth of known genius but great eccentricity, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself psychically hypersensitive, but the staid folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually from social visibility and was now known only to a small group of aesthete? I don't know what that word is. Aesthetes? 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 I'm not sure. From other towns. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservation and conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. On the occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas-relief. No, it's like aesthetic, but instead of tick at the end, it's like ES. He spoke in a dreamy, stilted manner which suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle shewed some sharpness in replying. For the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. Oh, really? I just don't know how to pronounce it. He said, "It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or the contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girdled Babylon." Who girdles things these days? Who uses girdle? It was then that he began that rambling tale which suddenly played upon a sleepy memory and won the fevered interest of my uncle. There had been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, and the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of great cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. Aesthete? Ah! Hieroglyphics had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice. A chaotic sensation which only fancy could transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by the almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. How the heck am I supposed to pronounce that? Good dead linguistics, you can figure this out, Betsy! So if it's Cthulhu... Fatagin. It sounds like I'm saying something in an angry language. Happy hello. How do I pronounce this? Cthulhu Fatagin. Cthulhu Ftang. We'll just say that that's what it is. This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Engel. He questioned the sculptor with scientific minuteness and studied with almost frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself working. Chilled and clad only in his night clothes, when walking and waking had stolen bewilderingly over him, my uncle blamed his old age. Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to this visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence which was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body. Lala Cthulhu Feng Louis Louis Oh, are you telling me that's coming up later in the story, Hemi? I'm gonna be in so much trouble reading that. When Professor Engel became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic law, he besieged his visitor with demands for full reports of dreams. This bore regular fruit, for after the first interview, the manuscript records daily calls of the young man. Shad, hello! Welcome in! We're just having story time. So we're talking about daily calls of a young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously in enigmatical sense impacts. Uninscribable save as gibberish. The two sounds most frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Cthulhu and Rlia. Cthulhu and Rlia. On March 23rd, the manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscene and obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family at Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch of the case, calling often at the Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind, apparently, was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing, miles high, which walked or lumbered about. He at no time fully described this object, but occasional frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. Reference to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence into lethargy. His temperature, oddly enough, was not greatly above normal, and his whole condition was otherwise such as to suggest true fever rather than mental disorder. Why are you ringing so loud? Let's turn you down. On April 2nd, at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's malady suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days, but to Professor Angle he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here, the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought, so much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons, covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all of the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and the dates of any notable visions for some time past. The reception of his request seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. The original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes formed a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and business, New England's traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result, though scattered cases of uneasy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague description suggest fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes, and in one case there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. It was from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know the panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes. As it was, lacking their original letters, I half suspected the compiler of having asked leading questions, or of having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continued to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of the old data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing on the veteran scientist. These responses from aesthetes? We decided it was aesthetes. Aesthetes told a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed very bizarre things, the intensity of the dreams being immeasurably the stronger during the period of the sculptor's delirium. Over 1/4 of those who had reported anything reported scenes and half-sounds not unlike those which Wilcox had described, and some of the dreamers confessed acute fear of the gigantic nameless thing visible toward the last. One case, which the note describes with emphasis, was very sad. The subject, a widely known architect with leanings towards theosophy and occultism, went violently insane on the date of young Wilcox's seizure, and expired several months later after incessant screamings to be saved from some escaped denizen of hell. Had my uncle referred to these cases by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation, but, as it was, I succeeded in tracing down only a few. All of these, however, bore out the notes in full. I have often wondered if all the objects of the professor's questioning felt as puzzled as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. The press cuttings, as I have intimated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Engel must have employed a cutting bureau, for the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the globe. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leaped from a window after a shocking cry. Here likewise a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a theosophist colony as donning white robes en masse for some glorious fulfillment, which never arrives. Whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious native unrest towards the end of March, voodoo orgies multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. American officers in the Philippines find certain tribes bothersome about this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by hysterical Levantines on the night of March 22nd to 23rd. The west of Ireland, too, is full of wild rumour and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Ardois Bonnard hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. And so, numerous are the recorded troubles in insane asylums that only a miracle can have stopped the medical fraternity from noting strange parallelisms and drawing mystified conclusions. A weird bunch of cuttings, all told, and I can, at this date, scarcely envisage envisage the callous rationalism with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. We're heading into the tale of Inspector Legrasse. Is it Legrasse or Legrassi? Legrasse. The older matters which had made the sculptor's dream in bas relief so significant to my uncle formed the subject of the second half of his long manuscript. Once before, it appears Professor Angle. Neil deGrasse. Yeah, maybe. Once before, it appears Professor Angle had seen the hellish outlines of the nameless monstrosity, puzzled over the unknown hieroglyphics, and heard the ominous syllables which can be rendered only as Cthulhu. And all this in so stirring and horrible a connection that it is small wonder he pursued young Wilcox with queries and demands for data. The earlier experience had come in 1908, 17 years before, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting in St. Louis. Professor Angle, as befitted one of his authority and attainments, had had a prominent part in all the deliberations, and was one of the first to be approached by the several outsiders who took advantage of the convocation to offer questions for correct answering and problems for expert solution. It's an interview with Cthulhu? I don't think they've quite narrowed it down yet. They're just trying to figure out what's going on with everybody. The chief of these outsiders, and in short time the focus of interest for the entire meeting, was a commonplace-looking middle-aged man who had travelled all the way from New Orleans for certain special information, unobtainable from any local source. His name was John Raymond Legrasse, and he was by profession an inspector of police. With him he bore the subject of his visit, a grotesque, repulsive, and apparently very ancient stone statuette, whose origin he was at a loss to determine. It must not be fancied that Inspector Legrasse had the least interest in archaeology. On the contrary, he wished for enlightenment. His wish for enlightenment was prompted by purely professional considerations. The statuette, idol, fetish, or whatever it was, had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting. And so singular and hideous were the rites connected with it that the police could not what? I think someone's made a typo here. Could not have realized that they had stumbled on a dark cult totally unknown to them, and infinitely more diabolic than even the darkest of voodoo circles. I am editing on the fly. I've never read this before. Of its origin, apart from the erratic and unbelievable tales extorted from the captured members, absolutely nothing was to be discovered. Hence the anxiety of the police for any antiquarian lore which might help them to place the frightful symbol, and through it track down the cult to its fountainhead. Inspector Legrasse was scarcely prepared for the sensation which his offering created. One sight of the thing had been enough to throw the assembled men of science into a state of tense excitement, and they lost no time in crowding around him to gaze at the diminutive figure whose utter strangeness and air of genuinely abysmal antiquity hinted so potently at unopened and archaic vistas. No recognized school of sculpture had animated this terrible object, yet centuries and even thousands of years seemed recorded in its dim and greenish surface of unplaceable stone. The figure, which was finally passed slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height, and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back edge of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long curved claws of the doubled-up crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down towards the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward, so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws, which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable, yet not one link did it shew with any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed to any other time. Totally separate and apart, its very material was mystery. The soapy, greenish-black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy. Why? I did so well with the big words. Why that one? Mineralogy. 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 I got it. Phenomena. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the words. Morning, Yoshi! Well, it's expert learning in this field. They're called rooks. No member present, despite a representation of half the world's expert leaning in this field, could form the least notion of even their remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belong to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it, something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life, in which our world and our conceptions have no part. And yet, as the members severally shook their heads and confessed defeat at the inspector's problem, there was one man in that gathering who suspected a touch of bizarre familiarity in the monstrous shape and writing, who presently told with some diffidence of the odd trifle he knew. This person was the late William Channing Webb, professor of anthropology in Princeton University, and an explorer of no slight note. Professor Webb had been engaged 48 years before in a tour of Greenland and Iceland in search of some runic inscriptions which he failed to unearth, and whilst high up on the West Greenland coast had encountered a singular tribe or cult of degenerate Esquimaux, whose religion, a curious form of devil worship, chilled him with its deliberate bloodthirstiness and repulsiveness. It was a faith of which other Esquimaux knew little, and which Is the time machine one also Lovecraft? Because I think the lore kind of flows through some of the stories. I think. I don't actually know because I've never read them. This is the first one I've read. Oh, where are we up to? It was a faith of which other Esquimaux knew little, and which they mentioned only with shudders, saying that it had come down from horribly ancient aeons before ever the world was made. Besides nameless rites and human sacrifices, there were certain queer hereditary rituals addressed to a supreme devil or a Tornasuk. And of this Professor Webb had taken a careful phonetic copy from an aged Angie Cook, or wizard priest, expressing the sounds in Roman letters as best he knew how, but just now of prime significance with the fetish which this cult had cherished, and around which they danced when the aura leaped high over the ice cliffs. It was, the professor stated, a very crude bas-relief of stone. R.H.G. Wells. Oh, okay. Compromising a hideous picture and some cryptic writing, and so far as he could tell, it was a rough parallel in all essential features of the bestial thing now lying before the meeting. Oh, Hammy, it's coming up! This data, received with suspense and astonishment by the assembled members, proved doubly exciting to Inspector Legrasse, and he began at once to ply his informant with questions. Having noted and copied an oral ritual among the swamp cult worshippers his men had arrested, he besought the professor to remember as best he might the syllables taken down amongst the diabolist Esquimaux. There then followed an exhaustive comparison of details, and a moment of really awed silence when both detective and scientist agreed on the virtual identity of the phrase common to two hellish rituals so many worlds of distance apart. What, in substance, both the Esquimaux wizards and the Louisiana swamp priests had chanted to their kindred idols was something very like this, the word division being guessed at from traditional breaks in the phrase, as chanted aloud. Louis, Cthulhu, We tried. I need a drink of water after that. I know there's people who can probably speak the language. Oh, thank you, Abby. Take a sip, everyone. The grass had at one point in advance Professor Webb, for several among his mongrel prisoners had repeated to him what older celebrants had told him the words meant. The text, as given, ran something like this. In his house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. And now, in response to a general and urgent demand, Inspector Legrasse related as fully as possible his experience with the swamp worshippers, telling a story to which I could see my uncle attached profound significance. It savoured of the wildest dreams of myth-maker and theosophist, and disclosed an astonishing degree of cosmic imagination amongst such half-castes and pariahs as might be least expected to possess it. On November 1st, 1907, there had come to the New Orleans police a frantic summons from the swamp and lagoon country to the south. Oh, there he goes. Ah! We're good. This squad is their most primitive but good-natured descendants of Lafitte's men, were in the grip of stark terror from an unknown thing which had stolen upon them in the night. It was voodoo, apparently, but voodoo of a more terrible sort than they had ever known. And some of their woodrum, some of their women and children had disappeared since the malevolent Tom Tom had begun its incessant. Tom Tom is the name of our family cat. She's not that malevolent. I know, like, she likes to bite and scratch, but she's not that evil. Classic Silence had begun its incessant beating far within the black haunted woods where no dweller ventured. There were insane shouts and harrowing screams, soul-chilling chants and dancing devil flames, and the frightened messenger added, the people could stand it no more. So a body of 20 police, filling 2 carriages and an automobile, had set out in the late afternoon, with the shivering squatter as a guide. The cat had it really? What was it called? Satan? At the end of the possible road they alighted, and for miles slushed on in silence through the terrible cypress woods where day never came. Ugly roots and malignant hanging nooses of Spanish moss beset them, and now and then a pile of dank stones or a fragment of a rotting wall intensified by its hint of morbid habitation, a depression in which a miserable huddle of huts hove in sight, and hysterical dwellers ran out to cluster around the group of bobbing lanterns. The muffled beat of Tom... Oh, I just realized... Oops. You can't write it down. Oh, it's that bad, really? Better not write it then. Beat of the drums was now faintly audible far, far ahead, and a curdling shriek came at infrequent intervals when the wind shifted. A reddish glare, too, seemed to filter through the pale undergrowth beyond endless avenues of forest night. Reluctant even to be left alone again, each one of the cowed squatters refused point blank to advance another inch toward the scene of unholy worship. So Inspector Legras and his 19 colleagues plunged on, unguided, into black arcades of horror that none of them had ever trod before. The region now entered by the police was one of traditionally evil repute, substantially unknown and untraversed by white men. There were legends of a hidden lake unglimpsed by mortal sight, in which dwelt a huge, formless white polypus thing with luminous eyes, and squatters whispered that bat-winged devils flew up out of caverns in inner earth to worship it at night. They said it had been there before D'Iberville, before La Salle, before the Indians, and before even the wholesome beasts and birds of the woods. It was a nightmare itself, and to see it was to die. But it made men dream, and so they knew enough to keep away. The present voodoo orgy was, indeed, on the merest fringe of this abhorred area, but that location was bad enough. Hence perhaps the very place of the worship had terrified the squatters more than the shocking sounds and incidents. Only poetry or madness could do justice to the noises heard by Legras's men as they ploughed on through the black morass towards the red glare and the muffled drums. There are vocal qualities peculiar to men, and vocal qualities peculiar to beasts, and it is terrible to hear the one where the source should yield the other. Animal fury and orgiastic license here whipped themselves to demonic heights by howls and squawking ecstasies that tore and reverberated through those nighted woods like pestilential tempests from the gusts of hell. Now and then the less organized ululation would cease, and from what seemed a well-drilled chorus of hoarse voices would rise and sing-song chant that hideous phrase of ritual. Oh, here we go again. Then the men, having reached a spot where the trees were thinner, came suddenly in sight of the spectacle itself. 4 of them reeled, 1 fainted, and 2 were shaken into a frantic cry, which the mad cacophony of the orgy fortunately deadened. The grass dashed swamp water on the face of the fainting man, and all stood trembling and nearly hypnotized with horror. In a natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island of perhaps an acre's extent, clear of trees and tolerably dry. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than any but a slime or an angarola could paint. Oh, Sime, Asimi? Void of clothing, this hybrid spawn were braying, bellowing and writhing about a monstrous ring-shaped bonfire, in the center of which, revealed by occasional rifts in the curtain of flame, stood a great granite monolith, some 8 feet in height, on top of which, incongruous with its diminutiveness, rested the noxious carven statuette. From a wide circle of 10 scaffolds set up at irregular intervals, with the flame-girt monolith as a center hung, head downward, the oddly marred bodies of the helpless squatters who had disappeared. It was inside this circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared, the general direction of the mass motion being from left to right in endless bacchanal between the ring of bodies and the ring of fire. It may have only been imagination, and it may have been only echoes which induced one of the men, an excitable Spaniard, to fancy he heard antiphonal responses to the ritual from some far and unillumined spot deeper within the wood of ancient legendary and horror. This man, Joseph D. Galvez, I met later and questioned, and he proved distractingly imaginative. He indeed went so far as to hint of the faint beating of great wings, and of a glimpse of shining eyes, and a mountainous white bulk beyond the remotest trees, but I suppose he had been hearing too much native superstition. Actually, the horrified pause of the men was comparatively brief duration. Duty came first, and although there must have been nearly 100 mongrel celebrants in the throng, the police relied on their firearms and plunged determinedly into the nauseous rout. For 5 minutes the resultant din and chaos were beyond description. Wild blows were struck, shots were fired, and escapes were made. But in the end, Legras was able to count some 47 sullen prisoners, whom he forced to dress in haste and fall into line between 2 rows of policemen. 5 of the worshippers lay dead, and 2 severely wounded ones were carried away on improvised stretchers by their fellow prisoners. The image of the monolith, of course, was carefully removed and carried back by Legras. Examined at headquarters after a trip of intense strain and weariness, the prisoners all proved to be men of very low... I'm not reading that. The author's being discriminatory and mentally aberrant type. Most were seamen and a sprinkling of multicultural people. I'm skipping that. Who he believed, I've got to paraphrase this, who he believed were very much into voodooism and cults. It's both. I think the Lovecraft race was tied into class. Welcome back. Is kind of... yeah, it was bad. But before many questions were asked, it became manifest that something far deeper and older than superstition was involved. Come on, Lovecraft! I'm not going to read that! Okay. The cult worshippers were very loyal to their faith in their cult. I think that's what he's trying to say. They worshipped, so they said, the great old ones who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky. Those old ones were gone now, inside the earth and under the sea. But their dead bodies had told their secrets in dreams to the first men, who formed a cult which had never died. That was this cult. And the prisoners said it had always existed and always would exist. Hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world, until the time when the great priest Cthulhu, from his dark house in the mighty city of Riley, under the waters, should arise and bring the earth again beneath his sway. Some day he would call, when the stars were ready, and the secret cult would always be waiting to liberate him. He's under the sea. Just a bunch of mermaids. Meanwhile, no more must be told. There was a secret which even torture could not extract. Mankind... I might permanently closed-eyed now. There we go. Mankind was not absolutely alone among the conscious things on earth, for shapes came out of the dark to visit the faithful few. But these were not the great old ones. No man had ever... I mean, Darren, there is like a certain man with a mustache that comes from a place. He's known for that. Who may have like been responsible for a couple wars. These shapes were not the great old ones. No man had ever seen the old ones. No, not Charlie Chaplin, the other one with the mustache like that. The carven idol was great Cthulhu, but none might say whether or not the others were precisely like him. No one could read the old writing now, but things were told by word of mouth. The chanted ritual was not the secret. That was never spoken aloud, only whispered. The chant meant only this: in his house at Riley dead, Cthulhu waits dreaming. Only 2 of the prisoners were found sane enough to be hanged, and the rest were committed to various institutions. All denied a part in the ritual murders, and averred that the killing had been done by black-winged ones, which had come to them from their immemorial meeting place in the haunted wood. But of those mysterious allies, no coherent account could ever be gained. What the police did extract came mainly from an immensely aged mestizo named Custer, who claimed to have sailed the strange ports and talked with undying leaders of the cult in the mountains of China. Old Castro remembered bits of hideous legend that paled the speculations of theosophists, and made man and the world seem recent and transient indeed. There had been eons when other things ruled on the earth, and they had had great cities. Remains of them, he said, the deathless person had told him, was still to be found as cyclopean stones on islands of the Pacific. They all died vast epochs of time before men came, but there were arts which could revive them, which the stars had come around again to the right positions in the cycle of eternity. They had indeed come themselves from the stars, and brought their images with them. These great old ones, Castro continued, were not composed altogether of flesh and blood. They had shape, for did this... What is this? He was everything. Everything. These great old ones, What is this sentence? These great old ones, Castro continued, were not composed altogether of flesh and blood. They had shape. For did not this star-fashioned image prove it? But that shape was not made of matter. When the stars were bright, they could plunge from world to world through the sky. But when the stars were wrong, they could not live. But although they no longer lived, they would never really die. I'm saying it like this because it's capitalized. They all lay in stone houses in their great city of R'lyeh. I think is it R'lyeh? 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 Preserved by the spells of mighty Cthulhu for a glorious resurrection, when the stars and the earth might once more be ready for them. But at that time some force from outside must serve to liberate their bodies. The spells that preserved them intact likewise prevented them from making an initial move, and they could only lie awake in the dark and think, whilst uncounted millions of years rolled by. They knew all that was occurring in the universe, but their mode of speech was transmitted through thought. Even now they talked in their tombs. When, after infinities of chaos, the first men came, the great old ones spoke to the sensitive among them by moulding their dreams, for only thus could their language reach the fleshy minds of mammals. They kind of sound a little bit like mind flayers, don't you think? Like speak to each other through them for their mind. Have tentacles and big heads. Slimy. The mind flayers? I thought they were brain people. They're space people, aren't they? I don't know much D&D. Then whispered Castro, I don't know if we've got to that. There's lots of mentions of swamps, but when they mentioned potentially seeing, I'm assuming Cthulhu was whitish, it's like toward the mountains, so I'm not too sure right now. Gonna take another drink. Cthulhu, Shrek, same person, confirmed. Then whispered Custer, those first men formed the cult around small idols, which the Great One shewed them. Idols brought in dim eras from dark stars. That cult would never die till the stars came right again, and the secret priests would take great Cthulhu from his tomb to revive his subjects and resume his rule of Earth. The time would be easy to know, for then mankind would have become as the great old ones, free and wild and beyond good and evil, with laws and morals thrown aside and all men shouting and killing and reveling in joy. Then the liberated old ones would teach them new ways to shout and kill and revel and enjoy themselves, and all the earth would flame with a holocaust of ecstasy and freedom. Meanwhile the cult, by appropriate rites, must keep alive the memory of those ancient ways and shadow forth the prophecy of their return. In the elder time, chosen men had talked with the entombed old ones in dreams, but then something had happened. The great stone city, Riley, with its monoliths and sepulchres, had sunk beneath the waves. Oh, here you go, Jaren. and the deep waters, full of the one primal mystery through which not even thought can pass, had cut off the spectral intercourse. But memory never died, and high priests said of earth, mouldy. No, they didn't. And high priest said that the city would rise again when the stars were right. Then came out of the earth the black spirits of earth, mouldy and shadowy and full of dim rumours picked up in caverns beneath forgotten sea bottoms. But of them old Castro dared not speak much. He cut himself off hurriedly, and no amount of persuasion or subtlety could elicit more in this direction. The size of the old ones, too, he curiously declined to mention.
Thank you, whoever.
Of the cult, he said that he thought the center lay amid the pathless deserts of Arabia, where Iram, the city of pillars, dreams hidden and untouched. It was not allied to the European witch cult, and was virtually unknown beyond its members. No book had ever really hinted of it, though the deathless man said that there were double meanings in the Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazard, which the initiated might read as they chose, especially the much-discussed couplet. Hi, Trance! Thank goodness this is in English. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strangers eons even death may die. Legras, deeply impressed and not a little bewildered, had inquired in vain concerning the historic affiliations of the cult. Castro, apparently, had told the truth when he said that it was wholly secret. The authorities at Tulane University could shed no light upon either cult or image, and now the detective had come to the highest authorities in the country and met with no more than the Greenland tale of Professor Webb. Necronomicon is such a fun word. Trance only dates earthly mortals? The feverish interest aroused the meaning by Legras's tale, corroborated as it was by the statuette, is echoed in the subsequent correspondence of those who attended. Although scant mentions occurs in the formal publications of the society, caution is the first care of those accustomed to face occasional charlatanry and imposture. Legras for some time led the image to Professor Webb, but at the latter's death it was returned to him and remains in his possession, where I viewed it not long ago. It is truly a terrible thing, and unmistakably akin to the dream sculpture of young Wilcox. That my uncle was excited by the tale of the sculptor I did not wonder, for what thoughts must arise upon hearing, after a knowledge of what Legras had learned of the cult, of a sensitive young man who had dreamed not only the figure and exact hieroglyphics of the swamp-found image and the Greenland devil tablet, but had come in his dreams upon at least 3 of the precise words of the formula uttered alike by Eskimo diabolists and mongrel Louisianans. Professor Engel's instant start on the investigation of the utmost thoroughness was eminently natural. Though privately I suspected young Wilcox of having heard of the cult in some indirect way, and having invented a series of dreams to heighten and continue the mystery at my uncle's expense. Nyashi's brain was reason says Nekomiku. Neko. The dream narratives and cuttings collected by the professor were, of course, strong corroboration, but the rationalism of my mind and the extravagance of the whole subject led me to adopt what I thought the most sensible conclusions. So after thoroughly studying the manuscript again, and correlating the theosophical and anthropological notes which the cult narrative of Legras, I made a trip to Providence to see this sculptor and give him the rebuke I thought proper for so boldly imposing upon a learned and aged man. Nico Nico. Nico 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 Kostanta. Oh, you're just reminding me I need to do something with that. I forgot where I'm up to. After thoroughly studying the manuscript again and correlating the theosophical and anthropological notes with the cult narrative of Legras, I made a trip to Providence to see the sculptor and give him the rebuke I thought proper for so boldly imposed. Ah, yeah, I read that. He's gonna tell him off for like he thinks his uncle was taken advantage of, pretty much. Wilcox still lived alone in the Fleur de Lis building in Thomas Street, a hideous Victorian imitation. Is the background from Halloween? The background, all the background music that is playing, it's a mix of stuff, but the music itself is a bunch of royalty-free Kevin MacLeod music. And I think he's taken inspiration from some like horror films. I've actually never seen Halloween. I've never seen Halloween. I've never seen the Scream movies. I've never seen... What was another classic one? Halloween is Michael Myers, right? Halloween's Michael Myers, I think. The Scream is the Ghost Mask. Friday the 13th, never seen that. I think I might have seen... I think I may have seen little bits and pieces of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Because that's the fisherman. Nightmare on Elm Street, no. Hellraiser, Scary Movie, no. I missed all the classics. I was thinking maybe, if this is so off topic, but maybe it may be fun to like have a little movie night in the lead up to Halloween. Like I can maybe watch one. I have to do a lot of crochet this weekend, so Parasite? No. I don't really like bug movies. Or like things that creatures that have to like go inside you and then The Carpenter's The Thing. The thing. I don't know. Is it like E.T.? I've seen E.T. It's a thriller but no bugs. Oh, I've seen Signs! The one with Mel Gibson. I have seen that one. That one scared me. Does that count as a horror? Okay. But we're getting back to Cthulhu. I think we're halfway through the story. Wilcox still lived alone in the Fleur de Lis building in Thomas Street. It counts until the twist. A hideous Victorian imitation of 17th century Breton architecture which flaunts its stuccoed front amidst the lovely colonial houses on the ancient hill, and under the very shadow of the finest Georgian steeple in America. I found him at work in his rooms, and at once conceded, from the specimens scattered about, that his genius is indeed profound and authentic. He will, I believe, sometime be heard from as one of the great decadents, for he has crystallized in clay and will one day mirror in marble those nightmares and fantasies which Arthur Machen evokes in prose, and Clark Ashton Smith makes visible in verse and in painting. Dark, frail, and somewhat unkempt in aspect, he turned languidly at my knock and asked me for my business without rising. When I told him who I was, he displayed some interest, for my uncle had excited his curiosity in probing his strange dreams, yet had never explained the reason for the study. I did not enlarge his knowledge in this regard, but sought with some subtlety to draw him out. In a short time, because I became convinced of his absolute sincerity, for he spoke of the dreams in a manner none could mistake. They and their subconscious residuum had influenced his art profoundly, and he shewed me his morbid statue whose contours almost made me shake with the potency of its black suggestion. He could not recall having seen the original of this thing, except in his own dream bas-relief. But the outlines had formed themselves insensibly under his hand. It was, no doubt, the giant shape he had raved of in delirium. That he really knew nothing of the hidden cult, save from what my uncle's relentless catechism had let fall, he soon made clear, and again I strove to think of some way in which he could possibly have received the weird impressions. He talked of his dreams in a strangely poetic fashion, making me see with terrible vividness the damp cyclopean city of slimy green stone, whose geometry, he oddly said, was all wrong, and hear with frightened expectancy the ceaseless, half-mental calling from underground. Cthulhu, Fatangang, Cthulhu, Fatangang. These words had formed part of that dreadful ritual which told dead Cthulhu. I don't know how to say that. How do you say Fatagan? Cthulhu, Fatagan. Cthulhu, Fatagan. These words had formed part of that dread ritual which told of dead Cthulhu's dream vigil. And you must start to come out. It's perfect. Oh my gosh. In his stone vaulted ryle, yeah. And I felt deeply moved despite my rational beliefs. Wilcox, I was sure, had heard of the cult in some casual way, and had soon forgotten it amidst the mass of his equally weird reading and imagining. Later, by virtue of its sheer impressiveness, it had found subconscious expression in dreams, in the bas-relief, and in the terrible statue I now beheld, so that his imposture upon my uncle had been a very innocent one. The youth was of a type at once so slightly affected and slightly ill-mannered, which I could never like, but I was willing enough now to admit both his genius and his honesty. I took leave of him amicably and wished him all the success his talent promises. It's just a tentacle-faced attempt to say Bob Smith. Who knows? My name is Bob Smith, but everyone calls me Cthulhu for talking. Running. This is called Evening of Chaos. The matter of cults still remained to fascinate me, and at times I had visions of personal fame from researches into its origin and connections. I visited New Orleans, talked with the Glass and others of that old-time raiding party, saw the frightful image, and even questioned such of the mongrel prisoners as still survived. Castro, unfortunately, had been dead for some years. What I now heard so graphically at first hand, though it was really no more than a detailed confirmation of what my uncle had written, excited me afresh, for I felt sure that I was on the track of a very real, very secret, and very ancient religion whose discovery would make me an anthropologist of note. My attitude was still one of absolute materialism, as I wish it still were. and I discounted with almost inexplicable perversity the coincidence of the dream notes and odd cuttings collected by Professor Engel. One thing I began to suspect, and which I now fear I know, is that my uncle's death was far from natural. He fell on a narrow hill street leading up from an ancient waterfront, swarming with foreign mongrels, after a careless push from a sailor. I did not forget the mixed... Oh, gosh. Come on! I did not forget the marine pursuits of the cult members in Louisiana, and would not be surprised to learn of secret methods and poison needles as ruthless and as anciently known as the cryptic rites and beliefs. Legras and his men, it is true, have been let alone, but in Norway a certain seaman who saw things as dead. Might not the deeper inquiries of my uncle after encountering the sculptor's data have come to sinister ears? I think Professor Engel died because he knew too much, or because he was likely to learn too much. Whether I shall go as he did remains to be seen, for I have learned much now. Oh my goodness, Australia has a mention here! Da 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 da. Shush! We're making progress. We're making progress.
No confidence.
The madness from the sea. Is this too overwhelming? Is this too much noise? If heaven ever wishes to grant me a boon, it will be a total effacing of the results of a mere chance. I'm tired, thank you forever. Which fixed my eye on a certain stray piece of shelf paper. It was nothing on which I would naturally have stumbled in the course of my daily round, for it was an old number of an Australian journal, the Sydney Bulletin for April 18, 1925. I had escaped even the cutting bureaus. Okay, this is a little too intense for me. Let me change it. Yes. This is what I want. Yes, you're perfect. It had escaped even the cutting bureau, which had at the time of its issuance been avidly collecting material for my uncle's research. I had largely given over my inquiries into what Professor Engel called the Cthulhu cult, and was visiting a learned friend in Paterson, New Jersey, the curator of a local museum, and a mineralogist of note. Examining one day the reserved specimens roughly set on the storage shelves in a rear room of the museum, my eye was caught by an odd picture in one of the old papers spread beneath the stones. It was the Sydney Bulletin I have mentioned. For my friend has wide affiliations in all conceivable foreign parts, and the piece was a half-tone cut of a hideous stone image, almost identical with that which Legras had found in the swamp. Eagerly clearing the sheet of its precious contents, I scanned the item in detail and was disappointed to find it of only moderate length. What it suggested, however, was of portentous significance to my flagging quest, and I carefully tore it out for immediate action. It read as followed. Mystery derelict found at sea. Vigilant arrives with helpless armed New Zealand yacht in tow. One survivor and dead man found aboard. Tale of desperate battle and deaths at sea. Rescued seaman refuses. Particulars of strange experience. Odd idol found in his possession. Inquiry to follow. The Morrison Cove freighter Vigilant, bound for Valparaiso, I don't know what that is, arrived this morning at its wharf in Darling Harbour, having in tow the battled and disabled but heavily armed steam yacht Alert of Dunedin, New Zealand, which was sighted April 12th in south latitude 34 degrees 21, west longitude 152 degrees 17, with one living and one dead man aboard. The Vigilant left Valparaiso March 25th and on April 2nd was driven considerably south of her course by exceptionally heavy storms and monster waves. On April 12th, the derelict was sighted and, though apparently deserted, was found upon boarding to contain one survivor in a half-delirious condition and one man who had evidently been dead for more than a week. The living man was clutching a horrible stone idol of unknown origin, about a foot in height, regarding whose nature authorities at Sydney University, the Royal Society, and the Museum in College Street all profess complete bafflement, and which the survivor says he found in the cabin of a yacht, in a small carved shrine of common pattern. This man, after recovering his senses, told an exceedingly strange story of piracy and slaughter. He is Gustaf Johansson, a Norwegian of some intelligence, and had been second mate of the two-masted schooner Emma of Auckland, which sailed for Callao February 20th with a complement of 11 men. The Emma, he says, was delayed and thrown widely south of her course by the great storm of March 1st, and on March 22nd in south latitude 49 degrees 51, west longitude 128 degrees 34, encountered the Alert manned by a queer and evil-looking crew of Kanakas and half people. Being ordered peremptorily to turn back, Captain Collins refused, whereupon the strange crew began to fire savagely and without warning upon the schooner, with a peculiarly heavy battery of brass cannon forming part of the yacht's equipment. The Emma's men eschewed fights as a survivor, and though the schooner began to sink from shots beneath the waterline, they managed to heave alongside their enemy and board her, grappling with the savage crew on the yacht's deck and being forced to kill them all, the number being slightly superior because of their particularly abhorrent and desperate, though rather clumsy mode of fighting. 3 of the Emma's men, including Captain Collins and First Mate Green, were killed, and the remaining 8 under Second Mate Johnson proceeded to navigate the captured yacht, going ahead in their original direction to see if any reason for their ordering back had existed. The next day, it appears, they raised and landed on a small island, although none is known to exist in that part of the ocean, and the 6 of the men somehow died ashore. Though Johansson is queerly reticent about this part of his story and speaks only of their falling into a rock chasm, later it seems he and one companion boarded the yacht and tried to manage her, but were beaten about by the storm of April 2nd. From that time till his rescue on the 12th, the man remembers little, and he does not recall even when William Bryden, his companion, died. Bryden's death reveals no apparent cause and was probably due to excitement or exposure. Cable of voices from Dunedin report that the Alert was well known there as an island trader and bore an evil reputation along the waterfront. It was owned by a curious group of people whose frequent meetings and night trips to the woods attracted no little curiosity, and it had set sail in great haste just after the storm and earth tremors of March 1st. Auckland correspondent gives the Emma and her crew an excellent reputation, and Johansson is described as a sober and worthy man. The Admiralty will institute an inquiry on the whole matter to beginning tomorrow, at which every effort will be made to introduce and induce Johansson to speak more freely than he has done hitherto. Shush, Chance, shush! It's a New Zealand town! This was, together with the picture of the hellish image. Your name is, you should know. I should. But what a train of ideas it started in my mind. Here were new treasures of data on the Cthulhu cult. Look, if it comes up again, I'll get it right, okay? And evidence that it had strange interests at sea as well as on land. What motive prompted the hybrid crew to order back the Emma as they sailed about with their hideous idol? What was the unknown island on which 6 of Emma's crew had died, and about which the mate Johansson was so secretive? What had the Vice Admiralty's investigation brought out, and what was known about the noxious cult in Dunedin? And most marvellous of all, what deep and more than natural linkage of dates was this which gave a malign and now undeniable significance to the various turns of events so carefully noted by my uncle. Oh my goodness, koala. March 1st, February 28th, according to the international dateline, the earthquake and storm had come. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted wait, who is speaking right now? Is it? Yeah, it's still the narrator. Okay. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted eagerly forth as if imperiously summoned, and on the other side of the earth poets and artists had begun to dream of a strange, dark, cyclopean city, whilst a young sculptor had moulded in his sleep the form of the dreaded Cthulhu. The platypus! March 23rd, the crew of the Emma landed on an unknown island and left 6 men dead, and on that date the dreams of sensitive men assumed a heightened vividness and darkened with dread of a giant monster's malign pursuit, whilst an architect had gone mad and a sculptor had lapsed suddenly into delirium. And what of the storm of April 2nd, the date on which all dreams of the dank city ceased, and Wilcox emerged unharmed from the bondage of strange fever? What of all this, and of those hints of old Castro and the sunken starborn old ones, and their coming reign, their faithful cult and their mastery of dreams? Was I tottering on the brink of cosmic horrors beyond man's power to bear? If so, they must be horrors of the mind alone, for in some way the 2nd of April had put a stop to whatever monstrous menace had begun its siege of mankind's soul. That evening, after a day of hurried cabling and arranging, I bade my host adieu and took a train for San Francisco. In less than a month I was in Dunedin, where, however, I found that little was known of that strange cult members who had lingered in the old sea taverns. Waterfront scum was far too common for special mention, though there was vague talk about one inland trip these mongrels had made, during which faint drumming and red flame were noticed on the distant hills. In Auckland, I learned that Johansson had returned, with yellow hair turned white, after a perfunctory and inconclusive questioning at Sydney. and had thereafter sold his cottage in West Street and sailed with his wife to his old home in Oslo. Of his stirring experience he would tell his friends no more that he had told the Admiralty officers and officials, and all they could do was to give me his Oslo address. After that, I went to Sydney and talked profitlessly with seamen and members of the Vice Admiralty Court. I saw the Alert, now sold and in commercial use, at Circular Quay in Sydney Cove, but gained nothing from its non-committal bulk. The crouching image with its cuttlefish head, dragon body, scaling wings, and hieroglyphed pedestal was preserved in the museum at Hyde Park, and I studied it long and well, finding it a thing of balefully exquisite workmanship, and with the same utter mystery, terrible antiquity, and unearthly strangeness of material which I had noted on Legras's smallest specimen. Geologists, the curator told me, had found it a monstrous puzzle, for they vowed that the world held no rock like it. Then I thought with a shudder of what old Castro had told Legras about the great primal ones. They had come from the stars and had brought their images with them. Shaken with such mental revolution as I had never known before, I now resolved to visit mate Johansen in Oslo. Sailing for London, I re-embarked at once for the Norwegian capital, and one autumn day landed at the trim wharves in the shadow of, I do not know how to say this, Ekeberg? I'm sorry if there's anyone from Norway watching. I do not know how to say this. Johansen's address, I discovered, lay in the old town of King Harald Hardrada, which kept alive the name of Oslo during all the centuries that the greatest city masqueraded as Christiana. I made the brief trip by taxicab and knocked with palpitant heart at the door of a neat and ancient building with plastered front. A sad-faced woman in black answered my summons, and I was stung with disappointment when she told me in halting English that Gustav Johansen was no more. Aww. He had not survived his return, said his wife, for the doings at sea in 1925 had broken him. He had told her no more than he had told the public, but he had left a long manuscript of technical matters, he said, written in English, evidently in order to safeguard her from the peril of casual perusal. During a walk through a narrow lane near Gothenburg dock, a bundle of papers falling from an attic window had knocked him down. Two Lascar sailors at once helped him to his feet, but before the ambulance could reach him, he was dead. Physicians found no adequate cause for the end and laid it to heart trouble and a weakened constitution. I now felt gnawing at my vitals. The dark terror which will never leave me till I, too, am at rest, accidentally or otherwise, persuading the widow that my connection with her husband's technical matters was sufficient to entitle me to his manuscript. I bore the document away and began to read it on the London boat. It was a simple, rambling thing, a naive sailor's effort at a post facto diary, and strove to recall day by day the last awful voyage. I cannot attempt to describe it verbatim. Chimkin. In all its cloudiness and redundance, but I will tell it's just enough to shew why the sound of the water against the vessel's side became so unendurable to me that I stopped my ears with cotton. Johansen, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing. But I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemies from elder stars which dream beneath the sea. known and favored by a nightmare cult ready and eager to lose them on the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air. Jorgensen's voyage begun just as he had told it to the Vice Admiralty. The Emma, in ballast, had cleared Auckland on February 20th, and had felt the full force of the earthquake-born tempest which must have heaved up from the sea bottom the horrors that filled men's dreams. Once more under control, the ship was making good progress when held up by the Alert on March 22nd, and I could feel the mate's regret as he wrote of her bombardment and sinking. Of the swarthy cult fiends on the Alert he speaks with significant horror. There was some peculiar, abominable quality. Chicken, we're going for chicken. About them which made their destruction seem almost a duty, and Jorgensen shews ingenious wonder at the charge of ruthlessness brought against his party during the proceedings of the court inquiry. Then, driven ahead by curiosity in their captured yacht under Jorgensen's command, the men sight a great stone pillar sticking out of the sea, and in south latitude 47 degrees 9, west longitude 126 degrees 43, come up upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze, and weedy cyclopean masonry which can be nothing less than the tangible substance of Earth's supreme terror. The nightmare corpse city of Rillia, that was built in measureless eons behind history in the vast, loathsome shapes that seeped down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulhu and his hordes, hidden in green slimy vaults and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, thoughts that spread fear to the dreams of the sensitive and called imperiously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. All this Jorgensen did not suspect, but God knows he saw soon enough. I suppose that only a single mountain top, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel whereon great Cthulhu was buried, actually emerged from the waters. When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to unend myself forthwith. Jorgensen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder daemons, and must have guessed without guidance that it was nothing of this or of any sane planet, or at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great cavern monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the queer image found in the shrine on the Alert, is poignantly visible in every line of the mate's frightful description. Without knowing what futurism is like, Jorgensen achieved something very close to it when he spoke of the city, for instead of describing any definite structure or building, he dwells only on broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth. An impious, I don't know what that is, impious? Impious with horrible images and hieroglyphs. I mention his talk about angles because it suggests something Wilcox had told me of his awful dreams. He said that the geometry of the dream place he saw was abnormal, non-Euclidean, and loathsomely redolent of spheres and dimensions apart from ours. Now an unlettered seaman felt the same thing whilst gazing at the terrible reality. Jorgensen and his men landed at a sloping mud bank on this monstrous acropolis, and clambered slipperily up over tight and oozy blocks which could have been no mortal staircase. The very sun of heaven seemed distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out of this sea-soaked perversion. Impious? Okay, thank you. And twisted menace and suspense lurked leeringly in those crazily elusive angles of cavern rock, where a second glance shewed concavity after the first shewed convexity. Something very like fright had come over all the explorers before anything more definite than rock and ooze and weed was seen. Each would have fled had he not feared the scorn of others, and it was only half-heartedly that they searched, vainly as it proved, for some portable souvenir to bear away. It was Rodriguez the Portuguese who climbed up the foot of the monolith and shouted of what he had found. The rest followed him and looked curiously at the immense carved door with the now familiar squid dragon bas-relief. It was, Johansen said, like a great barn door, and they all felt that it was a door because of the ornate lintel, threshold, and jambs around it, though they could not decide whether it lay flat like a trapdoor or slantwise like an outside cellar door. As Wilcox would have said, the geometry of the place was all wrong. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal. Hence, the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmably variable. Google says impious. It's both of them. I would never get it right. Thank you for the headphones. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal. Hence the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmally fiable. Bryden pushed at the stone in several places without result. Then Donovan felt over it delicately around the edge, pressing each point separately as he went. He climbed interminably along the grotesque stone moulding, that is, one would call it climbing if the thing was not, after all, horizontal. And the men wondered how any door in this universe could be so vast. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre-great panel began to give inward at the top. And they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somehow propelled himself down or along the jamb and rejoined his fellows, and everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carved portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anonymously? It moved anonymously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black with darkness and almost material. The tenebriousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its aeon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings. The odour arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable, and at length the quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty, slopping sound down there. Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still, when it lumbered slobberingly into sight, and gropingly squeezed this gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outside air of that poisonous city of madness. Poor Johansen's writing almost gave out when he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, he thinks 2 perished of pure fright in that accursed incident. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. What wonder that across the earth of great architect went mad, and poor Wilcox raved with fever in that telepathic instant. The thing of the idols, the green sticky spawn of the stars, had awakened to claim his own. The stars were right again, and what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. After... what is this? Vigintillions. I've never heard of this before. After vigintillions of years, great Cthulhu was loose again and ravening for delight. 3 men were swept up by the flabby claws before anybody turned. God rest their souls, if there be any rest in the universe. They were Donovan, Guerrera, Angstrom. Parker slipped as the other 3 were plunging frenziedly over endless vistas of green-crusted rock to the boat, and Johansson swears he was swallowed up by an angle of masonry which shouldn't have been there, an angle which was acute but behaved as if it was obtuse. So only Bryden and Johansson reached the boat and pulled desperately for the Alert as the mountainous monstrosity flopped down the slimy stones and hesitated, floundering at the edge of the water. Steam had not been suffered to go down entirely, despite the departure of all hands from the shore, and it was the work of only a few moments of feverish rushing up and down between wheel and engines to get the Alert underway. Slowly, amidst the distorted horrors of that indescribable scene, she began to churn the lethal waters, whilst on the masonry of that what is a charnel? Charnel shore that was not of earth, that Titan thing from the stars slavered and gibbered like Polypheme cursing the fleeing ship of Odysseus. Then, bolder than the storied Cyclops, great Cthulhu slid greasily into the water and began to pursue with vast, wave-raising strokes of cosmic potency. Bryden looked back and went mad, laughing shrilly as he kept on laughing at intervals till death found him one night in the cabin while Johansson wandered deliriously. But Johansson had not given out yet, knowing that the thing could surely overtake the Alert until steam was fully up. He resolved on a desperate chance and, setting the engine for full speed, ran lightning-like on deck and reversed the wheel. There was a mighty eddying and foaming in the noisome brine. Brine? I think it's brine. And as the steam mounted higher and higher, the brave Norwegian drove his vessel head on against the pursuing jelly which rose above the unclean froth like the stern of a demon galleon. The awful squid head with writhing feelers came nearly up to the bowsprit of the sturdy yacht, but Johansson drove on relentlessly. There was a bursting as of an exploding bladder, a slushy nastiness as of a cloven sunfish, a stench as of 1,000 open graves, and a sound that the chronicler would not put on paper. For an instant the ship was befounded and befouled by an acrid and blinding green cloud, and then there was only a venomous seething astern, where the scattered plasticity of the nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining in its hateful original scattered plasticity of that nameless... I'm reading the same sentence again. Briny? Oh gosh. Let's try that again. I mean, in Australia we go with British spelling, so it's okay. Well, we kind of do both. Okay. It is lost horror. Why would you loud at the death? Here we go. Let's get this right. For an instant, the ship was befouled by an acrid and blinding green cloud, and then there was only a venomous seething astern, where the original plasticity of that nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining in its hateful original form, whilst its distance widened every second as the alert gained impetus from its mounting steam. That was all. After that, Johansen had only brooded over the idol in the cabin and attended to a few matters of food for himself, and the laughing maniac by his side. He did not try to navigate after the first bold flight, for the reaction had taken something of his soul. Then came the storm of April 2nd, and a gathering of the clouds about his consciousness. There is a sense of spectral whirling through liquid gulfs of infinity, of dizzying rides through reeling universes on a comet's tail, and of hysterical plunges from the pit to the moon, and from the moon back again to the pit, all livened by a cachinnating chorus of the distorted, hilarious elder gods and the green, back-winged mocking imps of Tartarus. Out of the dream came rescue. The Vigilant, the Vice Admiralty Court, the streets of Dunedin, and the very long voyage back home to the old house by Egbert. He could not tell. They would think him mad. He would write of what he knew before death came, but his wife must not get. His wife must not guess. Oh gosh. Death would be a boon if only it could blot out the memories. There was the document I read, and now I have placed it in the tin box beside the bas relief and the papers of Professor Engel. With it shall go this record of mine, this test of my own sanity, wherein is pieced together that which I hope may never be pieced together again. I have looked upon all that the universe has told of horror, and even the skies of spring and the flowers of summer must ever afterward be poison to me. But I do not think my life will be long. As my uncle went, as poor Johansen went, so I shall go. I know too much, and the cult still lives. Cthulhu still lives too, I suppose, again in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young. But his accursed city is sunken once more, for the Vigilant sailed over the spot after the April storm. But his ministers on earth still bellow and prance and slay around idol-capped monoliths and lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss, or else the world by now be screaming with fright and frenzy. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of men. A time will come, but I must not and cannot think. Let me pray that, if I do not survive this manuscript, my executors may put caution before audacity, and see that it meets no other eye. Well, my fellow story listeners, how are you doing? Did you survive? I feel like I have that effect on people when I talk. You're awake. Kay, hello. That was the Call of Cthulhu. How was it? Was it new to anybody except me? It was new for me. There's a bit in Discworld where Death gets drunk to... I can kind of see that. I had another story set aside that I was planning to read, but I probably cannot read it. Let me find it. I had a couple open actually. I had the other one I was looking at was The Dreams in the Witch House, and then I think I had there was a ghost one as well. Oh gosh, what is this? Waking up screaming? Okay, thank you for the sub. Thank you so much. There's less Morlocks and Eloy than you remember. I think you're thinking of a different book, Koala. It's very interesting to see, like, the things that he chose to include. He is very descriptive in his writing, and he's pretty good at, like, setting up like a scene and making it very visual, but at the same time, like, we do not need to know the exact, like, papers and stuff and the names. But maybe he had, like, wanted to give it more of a like academic feel to it. I feel like we're about to set sail on like a sea. Oh. Let's have a look. Yeah, I had the Dream in the Witch House. It wasn't as long. I got a little bit confused though. Because I thought that I thought that the writer, not okay, the narrator, let's say we'll call them the narrator. I thought the narrator in the story would have actually, like, I thought he went there and then on his journey back from Norway he ran into Cthulhu, but it doesn't seem like that happened. It just seems like on his way back oh yes, thank you for the hydrate. On his way back was when he just read. Which I feel like reading that out on the ocean where apparently, like, Cthulhu is under the sea was kind of dangerous. The narrative delivery is what you mix up with the time machine. Oh, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Ah, delicious, delicious water. Does anyone have, like, any very, very short stories I could potentially do one more. Very short ones, yes. I'm willing to take suggestions. Baby shoes for sale. Never. Wait. What is that? Is that your story? Is that your short story? Or is it an actual story that I need to Google? Ooh. This might be... It might be the storyteller's, time. I'm starting to go blind. I'm so tired. A very short one. Your bank account. No, Shannon, no. Oh. Yeah, it's tough these days, isn't it? I know. I've been trying really, really hard recently to try and save money. And I'm actually saving some, but not all. But I'm saving more than I was previously, so I'm working on getting better with that. I think I really have been wanting to do recently is like learn some new instruments, but it's kind of hard when I gotta worry about like the noise. I'm trying to think of a really short story. You know what I should try find? I wonder if at home I used to have this book. I'll do some Googling, because that one is short stories. Do you have the book, The Little Prince? I do have The Little Prince. I think I'm looking for something shorter than The Little Prince for tonight, though. Because actually, my vision is blurry. It's 2 a.m. I'm quite tired. I actually have, what is my Little Prince? It's like the cover's really nice. It's like a special edition book of it. I think it's in cover, but the cover is like some type of nice soft material. What's the one with Sebastian and Falcor? That's the never-ending story. Koala. That's not short. No. I tried looking for like a short story in my little library mini collection, but I didn't really have anything come to mind. That's why I thought maybe some Lovecraft stuff might be fun to do, especially since it's Halloween. But yes, I did promise I would do a bedtime reading stream as part of a charity goal from July? Was it July? July or August, around that time. But I really like reading stories to people. I like kids. Even as a kid, I liked doing it. So I would kind of potentially like to do it again. Oh, you know what I do have? You know what we could do? We could We could lighten the mood because it was very dark. Cthulhu was very dark. I have some fairy tales behind me. I forgot about it. We got Hans Christian Andersen and Grimm Fairy Tales. Let's see. I feel like Grimm's Fairy Tales is going to be more dark, but I think there's a shorter penultimate story, I guess. Gotta flip through. Oh my gosh, the Nightingale! I haven't heard of that one in ages. The Gruffalump? Wait, that's familiar, the Gruffalump. Is that a picture book? I think Grimm's is probably... Oh, let's not have this playing, thank you. Let's get away from the ocean. Oh, this book is pretty though. If only they had like nicer pictures inside. What do we have? Wait, was that sausage? What's in the pot behind me? It's my secret concoction. Mystery juice. I'm working on a new flavor of Mixie Milk. Okay, I just found a short story. I've never heard of this. Oh, you know what would be fun is the magic pudding. That would be a fun one. This one is called I don't have Tales of Beetle Bard. I'm sorry, Koala. You're listening to me play. Well, you were playing Monhunt, and when I when I tried to say Cthulhu, Fatalis screams too. Oh wow, the timing. Has anybody heard this like fairy tale? It's called The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. You read the Heffalump? I want to read this. What is this about? There's actually a picture of a sausage and it's wearing an apron and it's feeding the bird and the mouse. Oh my gosh. Okay, this says, once upon a time, a mouse, a bird, and a sausage became companions. No, serious. I've reached the time of day where everything is funny. Okay. They became companions, kept house together, lived well and happily with each other, and wonderfully increased their possessions. The bird's work was to fly every day into the forest and bring back wood. The mouse had to carry water, light the fire, and lay the table? Set the table? But the sausage had to cook. He who is too well off is always longing for something new. One day, therefore, the bird met with another bird, on the way to whom it related its excellent circumstances and boasted of them. The other bird, however, called it a poor simpleton for his hard work, but said the two at home had good times. For when the mouse had made her fire and carried her water, she went into her little room to rest until they called her to lay the table. The sausage stayed by the pot, saw that the food was cooking well, and when it was nearly time for dinner, it rolled itself once or twice. What? The sausage rolled itself once or twice through the broth or vegetables, and then they were buttered, salted, and ready. What? When the bird came home and laid his burden down, and they sat down to dinner, and after they had had their meal, they slept their fill till next morning, and that was a splendid life. Next day, the bird, prompted by the other bird, would go no more into the wood, saying that he had been servant long enough, and had been made a fool of them, and that they must change about for once, and try to arrange it another way. And though the mouse and the sausage also begged most earnestly, the bird would have his way, and said it must be tried. They cast lots about, and the lot fell on the sausage, who was to carry wood. The mouse became cook, and the bird was to fetch water. What happened? The little sausage went out towards the wood. The little bird lighted the fire. The mouse stayed by the pot and waited alone until the little sausage came home and brought wood for the next day. But the little sausage stayed so long on the road that they both feared something was amiss, and the bird flew out a little way in the air to meet it. Not far off, however, it met a dog on the road who had fallen on the poor sausage as lawful booty and had seized and swallowed it. Oh gosh. The bird charged the dog with an act of barefaced robbery, but it was in vain to speak, for the dog said he had found forged letters on the they named the sausage! They wrote their name on the sausage!
I don't know what we're yelling about!
What is this story? Chance, you don't understand. The sausage is the cook. And I wanted to change jobs. Oh my gosh, he must be so tasty though, because he would have all the vegetable juices on him from like rubbing himself in their food every day. The bird sadly took up the wood, flew home, and related what he had seen and heard. No, we've finished this. We're reading Brothers Grimm, Trance. It's called The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage, and they're all roommates who live together. And one got jealous because his friend told him something, and the housemaid sausage got eaten. Oh, it's terrible. The bird charged the dog with an act of barefaced robbery, but it was in vain to speak, for the dog said he had found forged letters on the sausage, on which account its life was forfeited to him. The bird sadly took up the wood, flew home, and related what he had seen and heard. They were much troubled, but agreed to do their best and remain together. The bird therefore laid the cloth, and the mouse made ready the food, and wanted to dress it, and to get into the pot, as sausage used to do, and roll and creep amongst the vegetables to mix them. But before she got into the midst of them, she was stopped. Oh my gosh. And lost her skin and hair and life in the attempt. This is a tragedy. When the bird came to carry up the dinner, no cook was there. In its distress, the bird flew through the bird threw the wood here and there, called and searched, but no cook was to be found. Owing to his carelessness, the wood caught fire, and so the conflagration ensued. The bird hastened to fetch water, and then the bucket dropped from its claws into the well, and he fell down with it and could not recover himself, but had to drown there. Oh my gosh! When the bird wanted to eat, no cook was there beside him. Yeah. Wasn't that a lovely book, kids? Oh wow, okay, it said sausage. I got pulled in by the word sausage and then the picture of the sausage cooking over the stove. Alright, let's see, what do we have? These are the titles. Apparently this is the complete collection. There's a lot of titles. Holy moly, it keeps going. Okay. Oh, so there's 200 stories and 10 legends. Interesting. We have the Frog King or Iron Henry, Cat and Mouse in Partnership, Our Lady's Child. The story of the youth who went forth to learn what fear was. The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. Faithful John, The Good Bargain, The Wonderful Musician, The 12 Brothers, The Pack of Ragamuffins, Little Brother and Little Sister, Rapunzel, 3 Little Men in the Wood, The 3 Spinners, Hansel and Gretel, The 3 Snake Leaves, The White Snake, The Straw, The Coal and the Bean, The Fisherman and His Wife, The Valiant Little Tailor, Cinderella, The Riddle. Thank you for the follow, Connor!
Connorman42069, welcome to the pod.
The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. Mother Holly? The 7 Ravens. Little Red Cap. The Bremen Town Musicians. The Singing Bone. Oh, thank you for hydration. Everybody make sure you get a sip of water. The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. Oh no, we read that one. The Louse and the Flea. The Devil with the 3 golden hairs. The Girl without hands. Clever Hans. The 3 languages. Clever Elsie. The Tailor in Heaven. I've never heard of these. The Wishing Table. The Gold Donkey, and the Cudgel in the Sack. Thumbling. The Wedding of Mrs. Fox, The Elves, The Robber Bridegroom, Corbus, The Godfather, Frau Trude, Godfather Death, Thumbling as Journeyman, Fitch's Bird, The Juniper Tree, Old Sultan, The 6 Swans, I think I've heard of that one, Briar Rose, Fundevogel, King Thrushbeard, Little Snow White, The Knapsack, The Hat, and the Horn. Rumpelstiltskin, Sweetheart Roland, The Golden Bird, The Dog and the Sparrow, Frederick and Catherine, The 2 Brothers, The Little Peasant, The Queen Bee, The 3 Feathers, The Golden Goose, Alelero, The Hare's Bride, The 12 Huntsmen, The Thief and His Master, Jorinda and Joringel, The 3 Sons of Fortune. Our 6 men got on in the wild. That sounds interesting. I can't believe it. Okay. Let's turn that down a bit. What else do we have? The Wolf and the Man, the Wolf and the Fox and his cousin, the Fox and the Cat. There's a theme here. The Pink. The Pink what? It just says the Pink. Clever Gretel. The Old Man and his Grandson, the Water Nix, the Death of the Little Hen. That sounds sad. Brother Lustig. Gambling Hansel? Hans in Luck. Hans married. The Gold Children. The Fox and the Geese. The poor man and the rich man, the singing, springing lark, the goose girl, the young giant, the gnome, the king of the golden mountain, the raven, the peasant's wise daughter, old Hildebrand, the three little birds, the water of life, Dr. Noel, the spirit in the bottle, the devil's sooty brother, bearskin, the willow wren and the bear, sweet porridge, wise folks, stories about snakes, the poor miller's boy and the cat, the two travellers, Hans the hedgehog, the shroud, the dew among thorns, the skilful huntsman, the flail from heaven, the two king's children, the cunning little tailor, the bright sun brings it to light, the blue light, the wilful child, the three army sergeants, the seven Swabians. This keeps going and going and going. The shoes that were danced to pieces. The turnip, the three sluggards, the old beggar woman, the 12 idle servants, the star money, the stolen farthings, odds and ends, brides on their trial, the story of Schlorfenland, Snow White and Red Rose. Wait, there's another Snow White story? Let's try that one. 571. There's Red Rose. I just quickly saw the ending of one of the stories. This one is called The Ungrateful Son. It's really short. It goes, The Ungrateful Son. A man and his wife were once sitting by the door of their house, and they had a roasted chicken set before them, and were about to eat it together. Then the man saw that his aged father was coming, and hastily took the chicken and hid it, for he would not permit him to have any of it. The old man came, took a drink, and went away. Now the son wanted to put the roasted chicken on the table again, but when he took it up, it had become a great toad, which jumped into his face and sat there and never went away again. And if anyone wanted to take it off, it looked venomously at him, as if it would jump in his face, so that no one would venture to touch it. And the ungrateful son was forced to feed the toad every day, or else it would feed itself on his face. And thus he went about the world without knowing rest. And that's the end of the story. It's so random. Here we go. This one's a little bit, this isn't as short. I might have to read this one another day. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness, some of these pictures. kind of like almost fable-like. The Hare and the Hedgehog. What is this like the hare and the tortoise? The hedgehog was standing by the door, his arms akimbo. I can't. Maybe Hans Christian Andersen is the way to go. Nah, that's like some short ones in it. Okay, let's see what this is. Here we go. Herr Korbs. There once was a cock and a hen who wanted to take a journey together. So the cock built a beautiful carriage, which had 4 red wheels and harnessed 4 mice to it. The hen seated herself in it with the cock, and they drove away together. Not long afterwards they met a cat who said, "Where are you going?" The cock replied, "We are going to the house of Herr Korbs." "Take me with you," said the cat. The cock answered, "Most willingly. Get up behind, lest you fall off the front. Take great care not to dirty my little red wheels, and you will... Wait. And you, little wheels, roll on, and you, little mice, pipe out, as we go forth on our way to the house of Herr Korbs." After this came a milestone, then an egg, then a duck, then a pin, and at last a needle, who all seated themselves in the carriage and drove with them. When, however, they reached the house of Herr Korbs was not there. The mice drew the carriage into the barn, the hen flew with the cock upon the perch, the cat sat down by the hearth, the duck on the well pole, the egg rolled itself into a towel, the pin stuck itself into the chair cushion, the needle jumped onto the bed in the middle of the pillow, and the millstone laid itself over the door. Then Herr Korbs came home, went to the hearth, and was about to light the fire when the cat threw a quantity of ashes in his face. He ran into the kitchen in a great hurry to wash it off, and the duck splashed some water in his face. He wanted to dry it with a towel, but the egg rolled up against him, broke, and glued up his eyes. He wanted to rest and sat down in the chair, and then the pin pricked him. He fell in a passion and threw himself on his bed, but as soon as he laid his head on his pillow, the needle pricked him so that he screamed aloud, and was just going to run out into the wide world in his rage, but when he came to the house door, the millstone leapt down and struck him dead. Herr Korbs must have been a very wicked man. The end. What are these stories? That's crazy. Oh my goodness. Okay, no, I think I'm starting to be a little bit delirious now. I should not be finding this as funny as I am. Ooh, Kaya's live. Okay, let's give Kaya a raid. They're just like tragedies. Thank you everybody for listening to me read The Call of Cthulhu tonight. I really hope that you enjoyed it and it wasn't like it was something a little bit different, but I hope you liked it. Thank you, Mommy, for the head pats. Yeah. I appreciate all of you. Whether you chat or whether you like is all appreciated. Just knowing that you're there. We're gonna raid Kaya, who is amazing. Thank you for the raid. That's okay. I would be interested in doing some more raid. Oh wait, no, that's what I wanted to do. Raid. Thank you. Thank you, Tree. I'm not thinking clearly right now. Raid. I think Kaya would be perfect. Perfect to raid from the end of this stream. I hope you all enjoyed the tavern ambience and my antics. I'm planning to stream tomorrow. It's gonna be crafting and crocheting. I need to make a Totoro for my nephew because it was his birthday. So I will be working on that this weekend. Maybe we can watch a horror movie at the same time. Maybe that could be a thing we can do. We'll see. But that'll probably be all day tomorrow for me, although that is technically today. But I need sleep. I need to get some sleep. Thank you, Agatri. Thank you, Sean. Everybody look after yourselves. Remember to take breaks and stretch, hydrate. And I will see you tomorrow crafting if you guys are around. Until then, bye bye.